Good evening, visitors, and welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Gerard Pratt, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is Captain Lisa Batchelor. We warmly welcome the family of Private Archie Graham Mail, whose story will be told shortly. In addition to Private Mail's service being honoured through the story being read today, we also remember the events that took place 15 years ago during Operation Catalyst, as a part of Australia's commitment to assist multinational forces in the stabilisation and security of Iraq. We are therefore honoured to acknowledge Lieutenant General Joseph Osterman, Commanding General, 1st Marine Expeditionary Force, United States of America, and the accompanying delegation, as well as Commodore Philip Spedding and Commodore Michelle Miller, who were the Commanding Officer and Executive Officer, respectively, of HMAS Stewart at the time of the USS Firebolt incident. And all those who are joining us today who were serving in HMAS Stewart and USS Firebolt at the time, as well as their families and friends. We are also honoured to acknowledge Mr. Kerry Stokes, Chairman of the Council of the Australian War Memorial, Mrs. Christine Simpson-Stokes, Dr. Brendan Nelson, Director of the Australian War Memorial, and Ms. Gillian Adamson. We also welcome Mr. Gordon Richardson, a Second World War veteran who served in the Royal Australian Air Force, members of the Officer Training Unit Skyville Association and the Officer Training Unit Class 4 of 68 graduation members joining us as part of their reunion program, as well as the Legacy Youth Program. As always, we welcome the veterans who have served, those who are still serving, and the families who love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony from across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by family, visitors, and students on behalf of the following schools. From Victoria, St Joseph's School, Yarra Junction, and from Western Australia, Hale School, Wembley Downs. Private Archie Graham Mail, whose story will be honoured through today's Last Post ceremony, was a pupil at Hale School, as was Victoria Cross recipient Mr. Ben Robert Smith, who is also joining us this evening with Mrs. Emma Robert Smith. If able, I invite you all to please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. Children, students, please be seated. I'd now like to invite Dr. Brendan Nelson, Director of the Australian War Memorial, to deliver an address.
We pause here on the eve of the 104th anniversary of the Gallipoli landings for the Last Post ceremony, in the heart of the land they loved, in the heart of the Australian War Memorial, cloaked by the names of 102,800 men and women who have given their lives for us, our freedoms, in war and in peace. Tonight is also another significant milestone in our nation's history and the sacrifice of young Australians. And that is that 15 years ago today, the crew of HMAS Stewart undertook extraordinary bravery in the North Arabian Gulf in support of our nation's key ally and its sailors from USS Firebolt. HMAS Stewart was a part of the maritime force tasked with securing the safety of the North Arabian Gulf, including 2 Iraqi oil terminals. Just before dusk, USS Firebolt, United States patrol boat, had a landing craft which was approaching a fishing vessel that was coming alongside one of the Iraqi oil terminals. As it did, a massive explosion came from the fishing boat, capsized the US patrol boat and all of the US sailors in it into the sea. The commanding officer of HMAS Stewart reacted immediately, Commodore Philip Spelling, DSC, and the crew dispatched its Seahawk helicopter 872 to offer whatever support it could immediately do. Trying several times from the helicopter to support the sailors that were in the sea, leading seaman, air crewman Benjamin Syme went into the water and spent hours desperately trying to keep a US sailor afloat and alive. 3 US sailors were killed and many more were injured and wounded. Petty Officer First Class Michael Pernett Sully, Petty Officer Second Class Chris Watts, and Petty Officer Third Class Nathaniel Brackenthorpe were killed. The description of the battle was given us by Matthew Bryson, who was a leading seaman combat systems operator on watch on the operations room when the first explosion occurred. 2 explosions subsequently occurred. He said this: "We didn't have much in the way of spare people, so I moved to the boat space to help launch the rib to help with casualties. We saw the second explosion from the boat space and were still at action stations not long after when the casualties began to arrive. When the rib first arrived alongside, it looked like it had 1,000 things going on. Bandages, blood, wounded, CPR being administered, but also far too many people. There were a few wounded who managed to climb the jumping ladder, including 1 US sailor, with what appeared to be serious hearing damage, along with other injuries. He asked me what had hit them, and also asked where we needed him. Despite his injuries and his shock, he still wanted to work and help out. I helped him to the Smets, who were quickly onto him. It's memories like that," he said, "that stick around. The injured sailor that wanted to help. Every single person thriving under the circumstances. Individuals going above and beyond. The state of passageways. The activity of the ops room after alarm calls were made. And the comms as US military presence also came to life. And then everyone turning up for the dawn service the next morning. Those memories," he said, "will never leave, nor would I want them to." Behind me, you see the Australian flag. You also see the Australian ensign, the Royal Australian Navy. That is the ensign that was flown on HMAS Stewart the night of this action. It has been donated to the Australian War Memorial, and along with that helicopter, 872, the Seahawk, which is currently into storage, that helicopter, this ensign, and your story will proudly be told in the expanded Australian War Memorial. We say to the crew and the families who love and support you of HMAS Stewart, we are proud of you, we are proud of what you did, and we're also reminded in the presence of a senior US military leader that we are allies of the United States and we're not just good friends.
Thank you, Dr. Nelson. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through until the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths of floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Private Archie Graham Mayle. Archie Mayle was born on the 29th of August 1911 in the town of Bridport in Dorset, England, the third child of Archie and Anna Flora Mayle. The Mayle family was living in England when Archie was born, but later returned to Australia and lived in Broome. Archie Mayle Sr. had followed his elder brother Arthur to Australia in 1898, going into business with him managing a pearling business, and the Mayles were prominent identities in the Broome business community. Archie Sr. would be the Mayor of Broome from 1915 until 1918, while his brother Arthur became a member of the Legislative Assembly. Following the death of Archie Sr. in 1922, only the eldest male son Theodore remained in Broome. Archie Jr., Gwen, Thomas and their mother moved to Perth. Here young Archie, known to the family by his middle name Graham, attended Hale School in Perth and then Geelong Grammar before going on to work at the Commonwealth Bank at Claremont. On the 29th of April 1941, Graham enlisted in the 2nd Australian Imperial Force. He underwent initial training with the 3rd Training Battalion and had a period of pre-embarkation leave in early May of 1941. On the night of the 31st of August, Private Mayle was absent without leave. For this breach in discipline, he was confined to barracks for a week and forfeited a day's pay. In early September, Graham was sent to the Middle East. His introduction to the area was somewhat inauspicious, being hospitalised with fever less than a week after landing and then sent to a convalescent depot to recover from pneumonia. It wasn't until the end of December 1941 that he joined the 2nd 28th Battalion. Throughout early 1942, the 2nd 28th Battalion served in a garrison role in Syria and Lebanon, part of the Allied occupation force established in the aftermath of the Syria-Lebanon campaign. In late April and then May, Graham was in hospital with hip problems and sciatica, but he had returned to his unit by the middle of the year, when German and Italian forces began advancing towards Egypt. The 9th Division, including the 2nd 28th Battalion, was recalled to help check their progress and took positions near El Alamein in Egypt's western desert. Just after midnight on the 27th of July, the 2nd 28th attacked Ruin Ridge, and by 1 a.m. they were on the feature. Despite this early progress, poor planning and lack of support saw the battalion become in danger of being surrounded. An attempt by British tanks to relieve the battalion was abandoned after 22 vehicles were knocked out, and shortly before 10 a.m, enemy tanks began to move in from 3 directions. The battalion's commander had little choice but to surrender. The Australians were rounded up and marched through the British artillery barrage, resulting in more casualties as they moved behind the German lines. 65 officers and men from the battalion and its support units were killed or wounded. Nearly 500 were captured and became prisoners of war. From those who participated in the attack, only 92 men remained. Initially reported as missing, Graham Mayle was later confirmed as a prisoner of war. On the 16th of August 1942, 2 Italian cargo ships, Nino Bixio and Sestriere, embarked several thousand prisoners of war from the North African campaign at Benghazi in Libya. The prisoners were divided alphabetically by surname. A to L were on board the Sestriere. The remaining 2,300 prisoners, including Private Mayle, were aboard Nino Bixio. Escorted by 2 destroyers and 2 torpedo boats, the ships sailed for Brindisi in Italy. The British submarine, HMS Turbulent, sailed to intercept the convoy, and on the afternoon of the 17th of August, fired 4 torpedoes at the cargo ships before diving deep to evade counterattack. One torpedo suffered a gyroscope fault and went in circles, passing above the submerged submarine 3 times. The other 3 torpedoes hit Nino Bixio. One exploded in her number 1 hold, another in the engine room. The third did not explode, but grazed her rudder badly enough to disable her steering. Nino Bixio settled in the water, but her bulkheads held and she remained afloat. The attack killed 336 Allied prisoners, New Zealanders, Britons, South Africans, and Australians, including Private Mail. He was 30 years old. Archie Graham Mail had no grave but the sea, and today he is commemorated on the Alamein Memorial in Egypt. His name is also listed on the Roll of Honour on my left, amongst almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Archie Graham Mail, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières, or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you all for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.